Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 316, cover dated September 1994. So this is an X-Men event, Phalanx Covenant. The first part, Generation Next Part 1. The Generation Next storyline ran between Uncanny X-Men and Adjectiveless X-Men. And this is a special cover with a special foil holographic strip here. I'll just move that about a little bit so that maybe you can see the effect of the foil strip. And also the cover itself is cardstock, and it is a wraparound cardstock cover. So I'll just make sure that you can see all of that there on camera. And it is a cover by Joe Madureira, inked by Dan Green, and I would say colored by Steve Buccellato. It's a pretty cool cover, if I say so myself. I really like the rendering of Sabretooth here, who is for a reason front and center on this cover. Jubilee looks good, and so does the White Queen there and Banshee. And then they are fighting these techno-organic versions of the other X-Men. We've got Gambit, Beast, Wolverine there at the front. But who is this mysterious figure? So this is the introduction of one of the members of Generation X, who would have the codename M, and whose regular name is Monet St Croix, and she makes her first appearance in this issue. So also one thing to note is the cost of this in dollars was $2.95, and the issue of the regular a regular issue from the title would have been $1.50 at the time. So this is twice the cost just for this cardstock cover and this foil strip with a little bit of holographic circuitry board detail on it. Not worth it for that. But at least Marvel had the decency to put out an ordinary edition without the cardstock cover or the strip for a regular price, and that was decent of them, I think. So it was my choice to splash out the extra cash and buy this at the time. So the story begins in Monaco, a name that conjures up images of wealth and privilege. After tonight, for one young woman, the name Monaco will forevermore be linked with memories of terror. Okay, and this issue, the way the story is told in this issue, it's a bit like a horror story, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the comic itself. So this is Monet St Croix, and in this opening prologue to the Phalanx Covenant event, she is shut down, mute, responding to nothing, and she's got this guardian here, this British woman, who it turns out was ex-MI6, but their vehicle, the limousine, the $2 million limousine that they're traveling in, designed to withstand an assault by an army of terrorists, proves absolutely useless against a lone member of the mysterious life form that calls itself the Phalanx. So we have seen them in this version drawn by Joe Madureira in issues 312 and 313 of the title. You'll find video reviews of those comics on the channel. So this guy here grabs the unconscious driver and assimilates his organic form into his own techno-organic form. So the retired Colonel Gail Cordbecker in the back pushes Monet out the door of the limousine and pulls a gun on the Phalanx Covenant, or the Phalanx entity, blasts away at him, but she is killed and, absorbed by the creature. And Monet here remains mute. So the creature comes up to Monet and gives us her full name there, and talks about, it begins a biocentric analysis, but is unable to complete it, and says here, unable to execute biocentric scan at this time due to intense level of sonic interference. Now that will turn out to be one of M's powers, but we don't know her full set of powers at this time. And we also learn here that the Phalanx is after the next generation of Homo Superior, and that Monet is scheduled for termination. And the Phalanx entity notes that she doesn't respond to violence or threats of death. Subject responds to no outside stimuli. She's essentially in a deep autistic condition. So the Phalanx entity disappears, And that's the end of the prologue. Now, throughout this prologue, we have excellent art by Joe Madureira. We see some of his particular stylistic ticks on show here, with the interesting angles and upshots on faces like this one of the Colonel here. And also here, the profile of the Phalanx entity. We see the way that he renders the this really exaggerated kind of pulled back lips, showing almost the full range of teeth here. That's very particular to Madureira's style at this time. And also those eyes with the very large kind of eyebrow or brow ridges over these long eyes. We'll see that in more detail later. We will also see, as I turn the page here, who the full creative team is on this issue, with the splash page here finally. So we get all the details: the Phalanx Covenant, Generation Next Part 1, and the title of this particular part of the storyline is Encounter. And the creative team is Scott Lobdell writer, penciled by Joe Madureira, who from this issue becomes in effect regular penciler on the title until issue 350, with plenty of fill-ins along the way. Inked by Terry Austin. So we've seen Terry Austin inks to this point, but also Dan Green. So when Dan Green jumps on board for his quota of pages, I will point out when it's Dan Green and when we've switched from Austin to Green. But these opening pages are inked by Terry Austin, and we see his distinctive line work style here on the texture of Sean Cassidy, because this is Banshee on the texture of his trousers here. So he's in the school, Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and he is with Emma Frost here, who between issue 314 and this issue, via Professor X's help, has returned mentally to her own body after a year in a coma. And she's raging here. She's angry. And she's talking about Storm, Iceman, Archangel, all of them. They're afraid of me. They know if I wasn't restrained, I could read their minds. I could ruin their plans. I could destroy them all. And Banshee's just listening to her. I'm certain you could, Miss Frost. I'm certain you could. The poor woman, he thinks. 'Tis clear the strain of losing her Hellions is having an effect. Combined with the fact Professor Xavier telepathically coaxed her mind back out of Iceman's body, is it any wonder she snapped? But we'll learn a little later on in this issue, there's a very particular reason she snapped here. And then we get this great down shot of Emma on the restrained on the medical table, Banshee here, Storm in this older costume, and Iceman. Now that is difficult to do, to get all those characters on the right planes there. So Madureira doing the work and gridding out this panel in order to make that work. So a lot of work from him, and in the first half of the issue, quite a lot of time spent on backgrounds, all of these pieces of equipment and technology in the X-Mansion. Great shot here of Banshee as well. And again, those eyes, those kind of long eyes, and the big eyebrows as well, distinctive. And that kind of like spiky hair that he does as well for the character, and the sideburns for Banshee too. Very distinctive of Madureira's style. There's those sideburns looking even bigger here on this shot. So something's up, and he is, but he's not 100% aware of, or he's not even aware that there is something up just yet. So he walks off with Aurora because he has a little theory himself that the reason Emma's so upset is because of the presence of Iceman and Aurora, because as he thinks here, both of them had bad experiences with Emma Frost telepathically possessing their bodies. And so for once we get some decent and correct footnotes from Bob Harris, Uncanny X-Men 314 for Iceman and 151 for Storm. That's way back in Claremont, in the Claremont era. So he walks Storm out because he wants to be tactful about suggesting that maybe they leave Emma to him. And this is Storm's reaction here. While you were tending to other matters, Charles left very specific instructions before he left for Muir Island. And you know I'd never be so naughty as to disobey Professor Xavier, with that big smile on her face. Does that sound like Storm at all? No, it doesn't. So something's off there. And she whisks Sean away, saying to him, no one knows more about behavioural psychology than Professor X. He no doubt believes it is important both Bobby and Emma deal with each other right off, rather than let ill feelings fester and multiply over the course of time. So Sean tries to butt in, but she says no. You'll see, Sean, unwind from your trip, shower, get a good night's sleep, and by the morning everything will be peaches and cream. Not the kind of thing you'd imagine Storm ever saying. So she closes the door behind Sean once she's moved him out of the medical area. So he's about to tap the entrance code in to get back into the room, but he decides, no, you're definitely out of the loop. He thinks it's his own fault, really. How long has it been since he's shown any true commitment to the X-Men? Since he's felt that this place has been a home? And this is all set up, of course, for Generation X coming up, when he's going to make a commitment to the next generation of mutants and their education and training. But then there's an incoming call on the priority frequency, and who does it turn out to be, except for Scott and Jean? And this is after they've returned to their bodies. They're still in the Caribbean in St. Bart's, and they say they need to speak to the professor. They've got vital information that might be useful in finding a cure for the legacy virus, and that probably relates to their time in the far-flung future when they raised Nathan Christopher as Slim and Red in the adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. So Sean says that's great, but he tells them that the professor is on Mer Isle, and he asks them how the honeymoon was and whether they enjoyed themselves spending 2 weeks lying on the beach, bored out of their blessed minds. They were out of their minds. Their bodies were on the beach for 2 hours while they spent a decade, 3,000 years in the future. So here is, or rather, Cyclops and Jean get off the call, and Banshee thinks to himself, to be young and in love, I remember the feeling. So Banshee, of course, is one of the oldest of the X-Men. He's supposed to be a middle-aged man, and mature and with a lot of experience. So here arrives Archangel, but in his old costume. So what's going on? And he's pretty angry about Banshee being on the comm link and on the call, and he wants to know what did he say exactly. So Sean tells him to calm down, and Archangel says, you shouldn't have done that. Relay, when he says that it was Scott and Jean, and he told them that the professor is at Mer Isle, and so they're on their way there. So Archangel says, you shouldn't have done that. Relaying that kind of information to unauthorized personnel could put everyone at risk. Doesn't sound like Archangel, right? Unauthorized personnel? Warren, you're talking about two of your very best friends, he says to him. So, you are right, of course. I'll just phone ahead and alert Mer. They're about to get company. But in the future, Sean, and this looks ominous here, but a classic Madureira face here. We'd all appreciate it if X-Men communiques were handled by X-Men. Are we clear on that, Crystal? So Sean gets the idea, of course, that, the point is being made. He's not one of the regular team. By the way, this page is inked by Dan Green. Okay, so this is a Dan Green inked page. So we've got that slicker line and also the use of the paintbrush there, which Terry Austin doesn't do. And here we have that distinctive Madureira eyebrow, this long eyebrow, bushy eyebrow, and then the half circle of the eye right underneath the eyebrow there. Distinctive of Madureira in this era. And great little angle on Banshee's head here as well, as he looks askance at Archangel. And then, I was saying that Banshee's a guy probably approaching 40, in excellent shape, yes. But also we get in his thoughts here in the locker room before going into the danger room, a little potted history of his, his life story. So he says, I've been an Interpol agent in Europe, Lord and Master of Cassidy Keep in Ireland, a police detective in New York City, a reluctant villain in Nashville, Tennessee of all places, and finally a globe-hopping mutant crusader. So he thinks to himself, for someone who's built a life on change, You'd think he'd be used to it now. So he's heading down to the danger room. This is very cool, this top-down image. And then we get like a kind of a worm's eye view of him before the access door to the danger room. The computer's saying that the danger room is in use and a privacy code has been applied. And who's in there except for Jubilee? And that makes Banshee think, who's sponsoring her? What adult is supervising her session, that is? Because only adults are allowed to use the danger room unsupervised. That's one of Professor X's rules. So he kind of thinks to himself, now they're allowing minors in solo training sessions. Well, I don't want to be charging in and embarrassing the child. And then he starts to think, I think this is something I should discuss with the others. Next thing you know, people start traipsing in and out of the professor's ready room. Okay, so the ready room is the only out of bounds room in the X mansion, and here's Psylocke emerging from that room. And we learn from his thoughts here. I don't know what is more odd, that Betsy would be in the only truly off limits room in the entire mansion while the professor's away, or the fact I managed to hide in the shadows from a ninja trained telepath. So now he's getting it. There's something truly up here, yes? These 2 pages are inked by Dan Green as well, but we're going to go back to Terry Austin here with this particular page. So he heads in here to the ready room, and who's in there except for apparently Gambit and Bishop. Great top-down angle here again. Again, he's gridded out this panel in order to have everyone standing on the correct planes. It all makes perspectival sense. Really well done. So the 2 here are telling him, you know, there's nobody there but them grunts doing all the hard work while the professor's on the other side of the pond. And Banshee here says with a smile on his face, since he started walking again, 'tis almost impossible to keep track of the man. And Bishop here with this 3/4 profile from behind, and the shading on the front of his face there making him look a little bit ominous. He says, it's not our place to question the professor, Banshee. So Banshee heads off. They don't need a hand, but here he is in this is a great panel here where he's backed up against the wall outside the ready room, and we see the worried look on his face. And why is that? Now here in the middle of the issue there is a glossy glossy paper advertisement, and this annoys me a little bit. Like, why not have the glossy paper be the comic itself? Okay, if that's any part of the $2.95 price, give the reader glossy pages for Madureira's art. And here we get a double page advertisement for Generation X with the full creative team here advertised: Scott Lobdell, Chris Baccialo, and Mark Buckingham. So the artwork here by Baccialo and Buckingham, looking really nice. But if you open this up, it's a 4-page account of, I hope you can see all of that on video, Cyclops' timeline, an eye on the past and future of the first and greatest X-Man. And I suppose it's appropriate in the run-up to the creation of a new generation of X-mutants, Generation X, of course. And lots of great artwork here from the past artists like John Byrne and Neil Adams, Walter Simonson, Whilce Portacio, lots. It's pretty decent. Jim Lee, of course. And then we get that familiar house ad for the Phalanx Covenant crossover with the various issues listed here. Great art by Madureira and Terry Austin, and as I think I've said before in another video, I'd say this was coloured by Steve Buccellato, who's the colourist on this issue too. And we're still with Terry Austin here for this particular page. This is a great panel, and this is like one of Madureira's strengths and what he brings to the book. You just see Sean here racing down the corridor, and look at the use of speed lines here. Not too many other people were doing that at the time. Great use of perspective as well, indicating the speed and the urgency of his mission here, where he thinks They did not so much as blink when I lied, saying Charles is walking again. So he played a trick on them, and that's part of his maturity. You know, he's a shrewd, clever guy with lots of experience, which means they're either being mind controlled or some shape-shifting rogues have infiltrated mansion security. So this is kind of like, at this point, this is the horror movie element of it. Like, it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or They Live, or something like that. So what's going on? What's happened to the X-Men? So Sean goes to the computer. Like, this is a great little scene. Computer, locate Storm. Open into mansion security channel now. So he thinks he's going to talk to Storm. And the computer responds, non-applicable designate Storm is not currently on the grounds. So he's there sweating. How's that possible? I just spoke to her 10 minutes ago. Computer, locate Archangel. Non-applicable designate. Archangel is not currently on the grounds. Locate Bishop Gamut. Non-applicable. So he's thinking here, sweating. The sweat is dripping off his chin now at this point. Identify all essential personnel on grounds at this time. So, designate Banshee. Designate White Queen. Jubilee. Sabretooth. No other identifiable life forms on grounds at this time. So he gets it now. Saints preserve us, he says. Great shot here. Great 3/4 profile upshot on Banshee. That looks really good. Next page. Now he's gotten into his costume because he knows he's got some action ahead of him. And it's the old original costume with a little twist on the collar. But otherwise, his original costume he's back in. So there must have been, it must have been hanging in some closet in the X Mansion. So now he goes into Charles's ready room again, and the whole place has been stripped down. No, sorry, this is the communications room. It's the communications room where he was last in there with Archangel, and the whole place has been stripped down. And he thinks to himself, it's not possible. This would have taken a dozen SHIELD agents 3 weeks of working around the clock to totally gut such an elaborate system. And he was there less than half an hour ago. So what is going on? And it's as if the whole room is being dissected. This page inked by Dan Green. Then we're back to Terry Austin on this page. Beast is there with a big screwdriver. And he's got a big smile on his face. And he's saying, I should be done here in about an hour making adjustments. Don't you know? Then it's all yours. So Banshee, with a big smile on his face, says, "'Tis not a problem, lad. I just wanted to call Murile to wish Moira a good night." So Beast asks him, "Can it wait till morning?" "Can it wait till morning?" He's laughing there. "Ha, you slay me, Henry McCoy. Hoo-hoo. You're always joking, but sure, and it can wait. Fact, I'll go set me alarm clock right now. Ha, that's a good one." And then we get this close-up, 3/4 profile, kind of top-down view here on Beast, isn't it? So, you know, something's very wrong here. And then, shortly, he's down at Sabretooth's cell. And this is Dan Green inking again. And Rogue is guarding the cell. So, Banshee starts tapping away at the security panel to let Sabretooth out for his daily walk. And Rogue says, "Oh, she's already taken him outside today." Banshee, he's not listening, tapping away. I said, I've already attended to the man's needs. So something slipped there. And he's not listening. He's continuing tapping in the access code. "Are you listening to me?" She grabs his hand. That's a great panel. And he says, so this is great. This is a great setup here in terms of the dialogue. "Are you listening to me?" "That I am, darling," he says. Turn the page. "Now you listen to me." And then it's Banshee. We get his sonic scream. And I like the way it is described here in the narrative captions. And it blows her apart there. "It is a sound unlike any other produced on the planet. The sonic scream of the man called Banshee. His mutant power, his birthright, is one capable of splitting steel with the precision of a laser beam or leveling small mountains. So it shreds the techno-organic living circuitry that is but one member of the alien life form known as the Phalanx here." So pretty cool. And then he busts Sabretooth out of the cell. Sabretooth was unconscious, but Sabretooth knows what's going on, and he says here, was counting on one of you piecing things together eventually. Just didn't think it would be you, Irish. So, you got a game plan. But here's the rogue Phalanx entity back with these claws, these deadly looking claws. Sabretooth takes care of it and just pounds her into nothing. Banshee here looking really aghast at Sabretooth's viciousness. And there's in the captions it talks about how Sabretooth is there at the mansion getting help with his homicidal rage from Professor X. And the narrative caption says he was arguably showing the slightest bit of progress until now. The animal has been let out of its cage, and he, Sabretooth, wouldn't have it any other way. It's a great silhouette here, use of silhouette. So here he is, and I like the way that Madureira does Sabretooth's body language, like he crouches down like a beast, animalistic, throughout this issue. So, he says to Banshee here, give me one reason I shouldn't give you some of the same treatment. Banshee says, because the detonator in my hand is hooked to your muzzle, Creed. Banshee always thinking ahead. One wrong move and you'll join your friend here on the far corner of the floor. So, Sabretooth, laconic, impressed. Just asking. Again, what's the plan? So, Banshee does have a plan, which is to free Jubilee, that Sabretooth free Jubilee and the White Queen. And of course the question is, what's Banshee going to do in the meantime? And he says, and I'll see about the exterminating. So he goes up again to Gambit and Bishop, but now we know they're Phalanx entities. We know it well. And he blasts through the floor here with this gun he's brought. And he fires at them. And he says here, and I felt it was time to be creative. He says, pardon the use of a firearm, but I know you possess the ability to adapt to mutant powers. And that is one of the abilities of the Phalanx, rather like Nimrod before them. And I felt it was time to be creative. And so he thinks here, all I need to do now is to set the self-destruct sequence and blow the ready room. Okay, so this is how he's going to take them out. Meanwhile, the Storm and Iceman Phalanx entities are being attacked sonically by White Queen. So Sabretooth has managed to free her and get Jubilee out of the danger room where she's obviously unconscious. This is a great anchor panel here. And you just see those huge shoulders on Sabretooth as well. So White Queen thinks she can deal with the Phalanx entities, but Sabretooth knows better. So he says to her that your Cybolt, as impressive as your Cybolt was, the same trick don't work twice on the Phalanx. So as she's running behind him, he's grabbed her hand. How can I be certain I can trust you, Sabretooth? Trust me? Ha. That's a hoot, so you can't. I love the Dutch angle on this particular panel. And again, you have that kind of body language for Sabretooth that Madureira's come up with, like where he's bounding like a beast. Looks very, very cool. And here's Banshee with his plan. He has set a self-destruct sequence in Professor X's ready room. It's counting down 25, 21, 17. He is checking the system for the files that the Phalanx entities were trying to download. And he sees that it is files on New Mutants, Monet St Croix, Everett Thomas, Angelo Espina, and Clarice, I can't read the full name there, Fergus. And these will turn out to be members of Generation X here. So he sees on this holographic map of the Earth where the various mutants are. And he says, did those creatures manage to download this information? Does the Phalanx know where these mutants are? So here they are attacking him. And they say, suffice to say they're but gene fodder for a techno-organic core. Rather, they will be, this Archangel entity says, the welfare of Generation Next is not your concern. Suffice to say, they are but gene fodder for a techno-organic core. Rather, they will be once they can be assimilated by the Phalanx. Okay, so he's learning that they can't assimilate mutants at this point. And that kind of makes a little bit of sense in relation to Douglas Ramsey when he showed up in issue 313 as part of the Phalanx entity, but not fully assimilated. So it must be by virtue of his mutant genetics that he's not fully assimilated and has some degree of independence within the Phalanx entity. So the Beast entity here says, until then, the truth is, the only way to deal with unruly mutants is to slaughter them. But Banshee's got a big smile on his face. And again, look at that classic Madureira rendition of those huge eyebrows, and then the eyes just hooded half circles beneath the big eyebrows, distinctive of Madureira in this era. So he says, well, that was honest of you. So I'll be equally honest when I say, last page later, and he drops down beneath the mansion and the ready room blows. So all the data's lost, and he's apologetic for that in his mind to Professor X. But he's escaped from the Phalanx. Sabretooth hears the explosion in the tunnels beneath the mansion, and Banshee, as he's falling down, thinks to himself, have to time this perfect sonic blast, clearing a path, letting me outdistance the explosion. So well done, Banshee. And then he happens on White Queen, Sabretooth, and Jubilee. And I like this decision by Madureira to pull the camera way back, and we just have these small silhouetted figures here for the four, and we get to see them in the sewers beneath the mansion. And I like the fact that he includes these little two rats here as well. That's a nice touch. Didn't have to do that, but it's a bit of fun. So he asks, is Jubilee all right? And Sabretooth says, she's fine. Why aren't we searching for the X-Men? And Banshee says, because those creatures had access to a file filled with new untrained young mutants, men and women we might have contacted eventually, innocents who know nothing of any of this. They are the next generation of Homo Superior that we have to find before the Phalanx does. So that's what this little crossover between Uncanny X-Men and Adjectiveless X-Men is going to follow Banshee and the others in respect of trying to get to those new mutants before the Phalanx does. So the letters here about issue 311. There you go. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on part 1 of the Phalanx Covenant X-Over of the summer of 1994, Generation Next Part 1. If you liked the video, please indicate so, like it in YouTube. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.